Well, many thanks for joining us. Time now to focus on our interview of the day. And I just told you before when we were starting this bulletin about the issue of refugees. I just want to take you back to the year 2016 when former President Uhuru Kenyatta announced to the world that Kenya was in the process of closing all 8 refugee camps in the country because of issues around security and, of course, the issues around budget. We are now joined by the Commissioner for Refugees Affairs. This is John Burugo. He's going to help us understand where are we in terms of the closure of these refugees camps and, of course, the cost involved when it comes to running and managing the refugee camps that we have in the country. Thank you very much indeed, Burugo, for joining us. Thank you. Help us understand. You are telling me that we have about 804,000 refugee camps. Refugees in Kenya.
Yes.
Where are they and what are they doing?
Thank you to host me. The refugees in Kenya have been with us since independence. Initially, they were about 20,000.
20,000?
Yes, at independence. And that time, there were about 13 small camps. Utange, Njomvu, Thika, Garissa. Mm-hmm. A small number in Kakuma. And those ones had free movement. Because by then, mostly were Ugandans who had come in. Because then, the East African community, as you are aware. But in 1990s, there was a huge influx because of the collapse of Somalia. Subsequently, therefore, the number shot beyond 200,000. Mm-hmm. And the government decided to amalgamate, to merge the camps. And the camps became Kakuma and Daadab as we know them today. And that is when now all the 13 were collapsed to 2. And over the years, the government has been hosting refugees. We do practice what we call open door policy. We receive, document, protect, and also give access to government services. Mm-hmm. So Kenya has hosted refugees since independence. Only that the numbers keep increasing.
They keep growing.
And keep growing, yes. And we have now 804,594 registered refugees, mainly about 400,000 in Daadab, and the rest in Kakuma. We have about 106,000 spread across our urban areas, mainly Nairobi about 60%, Mombasa, Eldoret, Nakuru, and even Kiambu, Roiro, Kitengela, Isinya. So they are across our urban areas.
And when you talk about 804,000, refugees, that is like the entire population of Turkana County, Marsabit, and then you can also throw in Wajir there. Who is in charge of taking, who caters for the cost of keeping these refugees in Kenya?
Kenya is a member of a global group of nations and is a signatory to the UN Convention of 1951 mm-hmm. that provides for the protection, the hosting, and granting of rights to the refugees. And what has happened is that over time, government has been working with the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. We have a country office, mm-hmm. and it works in collaboration with government and many other partners within the refugee space. So it is not only the Kenyan government. However, the government of Kenya carries a big chunk in terms of the responsibility of security, welcoming, documenting, protecting, as well as even giving access to services. Mm-hmm. We have been giving them access to education, health, water, sanitation, social protection, and we are now again moving. The humanitarian support globally has been dwindling because of the competing interests on humanitarian support. And therefore, the government of Kenya, just like other refugee hosting countries, is looking innovatively as to how we can sustainably be able to support the refugees, especially transform them or transit them from humanitarian dependence to development-oriented, where we create self-reliance and support them to empowerment. We have started socio-economic inclusion structures that would support them be able to access services, be able to also employ themselves or get employed. And we provide Permit M, which is the category for refugees to be able to work in Kenya. That is granted in collaboration with the Directorate of Immigration in the country. Mm-hmm. So I would say that the bigger chunk of the cost is on the government. And that is why from time to time, government has to assess what is the cost of the impact. Mainly, we have invested in security. Mm-hmm. We have also invested in the communities of Garissa as well as Turkana. They have donated that land, which the government designated by gazetting the two camps.
I want you to help us understand this. I mean, when you look at the growth of refugees in Kenya, about 20 years ago, there were less than 500,000 refugees in Kenya. Today, you're talking about 800,000. And you were saying that the huge chunk or the budget of ensuring that these refugees are hosted in Kenya, they are comfortable, they access health services, education as well, it lies with the government of Kenya. And this puts pressure on our budgetary plans because, let's face it, I mean, the country has been going through budgetary pressures or physical pressures. And so, for how long, you know, as a country, can we continue to say, just come in, we'll take care of you, and at the same time, you're also complaining about dwindling fiscal resources?
First and foremost, there are those conventions that Kenya, as a country, a member of Group of Nations, has assented to. And in the UN Convention of 1951 mm-hmm. and its protocols of 1969, it obligates countries to receive refugees. A refugee is that person who is displaced because of conflict, genocide, cleansing, or other persecutions, and expresses fear on their life and rights, and therefore they run away and they seek refuge in a neighboring country. Our 804,000 refugees come from East and Horn of Africa mm-hmm. and the Great Lakes region. And it is because of a protracted conflict and instability within the region that continues to push them this side into the country. I know that it's a huge burden. Of course, the country, first and foremost, is obligated to its citizenry to be able to provide in terms of budgetary, financial, and socioeconomic items that would spur the productivity in the economy. But again, we must balance our national interest against the international obligation, mm-hmm. which we are signatory to. And
that's what I was coming to next, because, I mean, yes, the fact that the truth of the matter is that Kenya is a signatory to a number of refugee agreements, if I was to call them so. Part of it is being a member of the United Nations, yes. United Nations, yes. UNHCRC.
Yes.
But there comes a time when you have to say, hey, wait a minute. Though we are members of this agreement is hurting our national interest. And so we can't take in more refugees because the numbers will keep on growing. And so are we looking at a situation whereby we're likely to get to that point?
Kenya is fifth in Africa in hosting refugees. Mm-hmm. I think Uganda is number one within the region. It has over 1.5.
Yeah.
And Kenya is also 13th globally. It is not that because we have an open door policy, we shall continue welcoming and registering and documenting and therefore undergoing the costs for hosting refugees. Mm-hmm. It is the national government interests, the national interests of the country the obligations that it has subjected itself to by assenting to UN Convention. It is for the country, the top leadership, to be able to decide now we cannot take any more because we are experiencing more pressure in terms of resources, in terms of security, or they pose a threat of some kind. If we get to that situation, then the country will have to take a decision. In 2016, when the country felt there was a threat to its national interest, the then administration decided, through a tripartite understanding, UNHCR, Somalia, and Kenya, to repatriate and close the camps. And E4, 2, and Kabios were closed. And a chunk of the refugees was taken back, was repatriated. But since then, the numbers have tripled. So we look at also
the numbers of incoming.
Yes, of the influx has tripled. What we need to be able to look at is the sustainability, because migration is in the character of the human being. The displacements, however, are forced displacements. What does the country do? Which measures can it do? First and foremost, we have taken measures to integrate them, to make them productive, so that then the cost of maintaining them is mitigated.
Very good. I want you to hold your thoughts there. I'll be coming back to you so that you can help us understand what are some of the mitigation measures that you have put in place as a government. I mean, we are discussing the cost of running and hosting refugees in Kenya. We are talking about almost 805,000 refugees in Kenya. The number has more than tripled in the last 30 years. And so if nothing is done, then we are likely to see another tripling in the next 20, 30 years. You're watching this conversation live from Broadcasting House. We're taking a short break. We'll be back with more. Stay right here.